Howdy folks, this is Clyde again with another one of my episodes. As always, high on life and stoned to the bone. Now this time I've come out of the wild side to bring you an episode about one of the most popular cities, definitely in the United States and maybe in the top cities of the entire world for people to come and visit. This video is put together from my own perspective. From growing up here, I came to Nashville when it was legal to drink at age 18. That's how long I've been coming here. I have sat with Miss Hattie Best in Tootsie's. I have been at Ernest Tubbs' Jamboree when he had the stage in the back of his record shop. At that time, people would perform on the Grand Ole Opry and then just walk down the street and sing some more on the stage of the Jamboree at Ernest Tubbs' record shop. So this is where I'm coming from about this video, and I'm going to let it speak for itself. But before I do, I want to say I hope you enjoy it. I hope you stay all the way to the end, and if you will, give it a thumbs up saying you like it, and then subscribe to my channel and hit the bell. That way you can get future episodes. Enjoy the video. This is the skyline of Nashville, Tennessee, also known as the Music City. It's the capital city in the great state of Tennessee. It's been the home city to two of the first 11 presidents, Andy Jackson and James K. Polk. With a population of nearly 700,000 people, it's the home to two professional sports franchises, the Tennessee Titans and the Nashville Predators. And it's also home to a AAA baseball franchise. When you come here, it's easy to see why this is called the Music City. Just about any direction you go, you can find good music. There's little pockets of it in districts and places all over town. But the epicenter for all of it is Lower Broad, where you will find the famous honky-tonks that most of the people come to town and try to stay close to. All of downtown is littered with restaurants of every kind, big entertainment halls, theaters, and stadiums for the big acts to play in. Now, seeing what you've just seen, does it make you a little bit curious as to how all this started? Well, long story short, in 1775, a treaty was made to purchase over 20 million acres from the Indians. There were over 1,200 chiefs present at that meeting. It lasted about 3 days, and the Indians agreed to take 10,000 pounds in goods for roughly 20 million acres. Well, that caused the settlers that had been along the eastern seaboard to start to move to the new Southwest at the time. Most of those settlers would go all the way south of the Appalachian Mountains around North Georgia and into the Carolinas, but they found a way to get through the mountains about where Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia all come together today. Now, just to the west of this Cumberland Gap, settlements started to spring up. One of the settlements was in a place called the Watauga Territory. These original settlers who came to Nashville and started Fort Nashville came from that settlement. They were led by a man named James Robertson. About 10 years before those original settlers came here, Timothy DeMumbrum trapped and traded here in northern Middle Tennessee. In fact, it was the French that first told these people about a land that was plentiful in game, fish, and fowl that made them want to come here and make a deal with the Transylvania Land Company. Now, Timothy DeMumbrum got along pretty good with the Indians, but as you can see, not always. His last known address when he died is at 3rd and Broad, where Old Reds is today. That street that goes from the Ascend Theater up the hill all the way to the other end of Music City Center is named for him. James Robertson and his band of men that had come across land, about 200 of them, would cross a frozen river right about here and begin construction on a fort that they would eventually name Fort Nash. Now this band of men would work on the fort all winter long while they waited on their wives and other friends to get here from that settlement by water. Imagine, if you can, being on a river like this for 4 months. John Donaldson had the only boat, and the rest was a flotilla of raft that left that Watauga territory December 22nd. During their voyage, they would endure freezing cold rain, fatigue, hunger, the ever-present possibility of slipping on your raft and falling into the water. You've guided your rafts through ice chunks, logs, and everything else because you had to stay close to the middle of the river. If you got a little bit too close to the banks, then you had the threat of an Indian attack. After months of this, you finally come to what you think is the mouth of the Cumberland River. But the winter melt-off has made the river very high and the rapid very strong. Some of the people even didn't believe it could be the Cumberland River. So they decided they would go on west because they didn't feel like their rafts were strong enough to make it the rest of the way, and they really didn't know how far they still had to go. The people who stayed with John Donaldson would have to pole their rafts the last 200 miles upstream until they got to the banks where they could see a fort right above them. Colonel John Donaldson would maneuver his boat over to the edge of that bluff, get out, climb it, and once again shake hands with his old friend James Robertson. James Robertson was once again reunited with his beloved wife Charlotte, who would eventually become the mother of his 11 children. She was not only his wife, but probably one of his heroes, because she was the woman who had educated him. Charlotte and her sister-in-law Ann Robertson would start the first school in Nashville just days after they got here on one of those rafts before it was disassembled. The people who came here knew it wouldn't be easy, that it would be a struggle. They made a pact with themselves that they would watch after each other, and they would basically hang in there no matter how bad it got. It took almost a year, but the Indians figured out that these people had come to stay. They weren't like the French, just going back and forth. The Cherokee devised a scheme where they would lure the men away from the fort down about where Lower Broad is now, and got between the fort and them. Still, Fort Nashville had come under attack. Some of the people who tried to leave the fort and settle in their own camps were attacked also. This settlement just across the river over a mile out of town was attacked and some people killed. About all that's left now is graveyard for that settlement. Treaties would need to be made. Captain Robertson would always take a group of men out to meet with the Indians at a place west of town where there was a grove of oak trees. With these treaties, the founding of Nashville could begin. Wait a minute, you say. You keep talking about Nashville when these people just settled Nashborough. Well, the explanation for that is, in 1806, when the city asked for a charter to become a city in the state of Tennessee, because the French were here first, they changed the name on that charter to Ville instead of Borough, because borough is an English term. In 1897, an exposition was held in Nashville to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the state of Tennessee. The only building left from that celebration is the Parthenon. The man-made lake is still there. Lake Watauga, in recognition of the early settlers, is the lake where the famous Duck Island is that holds the beehives in Centennial Park. Across that lake from the Parthenon is a monument that's been erected to James and Charlotte Robertson. Now less than 2 miles from there is the old city cemetery, where those two will rest forever beneath a giant oak tree. Is the last resting place for the father and his wife, his beloved Charlotte. Rest in peace, James Robertson.